Hello, everyone. This is Clayton Smith. I'll be your instructor in enrollment management theory and practice this term. Always like to take a moment to introduce myself before the class begins. And I'm going to invite you at the end of this short video to introduce yourself as well. But more on that later. So about me first. Well, some of you will know me as Dr. Clayton Smith. That's sort of the official name, and I suppose that's what we go by when we work for universities. And some of you might know me as Dr. Smith. That's sort of the shortened version of that, also acceptable. But I hope over the course of the term that you'll eventually get to know me as Clayton. Lancer Clayton is my Twitter handle, and you can always reach me there, but I teach courses like this to help build a network, to help build support for enrollment management professionals like you. So my hope is that that network is something that we can achieve as we come to the end of our time together. These are a couple of flowers. They are picked from my garden in LaSalle, Ontario, and I just like to share them with you because I think what education is about is making beauty. These are two of my beauties. Here is a shot I took in Vassalboro, Maine. Now, what you need to know is that I'm a dual citizen, both an American and a Canadian, and that I'd like to go home every once in a while. And this is near where I grew up. It's in this is a small pond in Vassalboro, and there I'm in the canoe with my daughter early in the morning, and we come across this wonderful tree, and it's a birch tree, as you can see, and it's reaching out, it's reaching over, it's reaching to the water, but you know, a lot of what you're seeing is a reflection. I use this picture in my welcome video because I want you to understand that that's what we want to be about here. We want to be about growing up and out and over, but we also want to be about reflection. Lots of time for that as we go through our time together. Here are a couple of shots of some national parks. You need to know that I have a bit of an affinity for national parks. There's two. One is in the Canadian Rockies that I think you'll recognize. It's Lake Louise. The other one, maybe not so. This is at Peely National Park, Peely Point National Park, right near where we live. And this is a winter shot, which is an unusual thing. This is you're looking out over Lake Erie, and you see all of this wonderful ice sculpture, if you will. And anyhow, two very different shots, but just to share with you a little something about me. These are a couple of shots of some international travel that I have done. The one on the left, picture on the left, is at the Mexican pyramids. I share that with you because, like, everybody knows about the Egyptian pyramids, which I've been to as well, but the Mexican pyramids were quite something else. And the picture on the right is with a colleague from the University of Windsor who subsequently went home to Sapporo, Japan, where he works there at a university in the engineering field. And I was there that day, a very cold day, as it turns out, on a mountaintop in Sapporo, and we were talking about creating a transfer articulation agreement together. Some places I've worked at, some places I've studied at, maybe some places I've consulted at. I share this slide with you so you can understand the breadth of my experience. To some extent, the depth as well, but the breadth is where I'm driving here. So I wanted you to see, I didn't get my degree all in one place. It was in many places. Similarly, I have worked at a bunch of different places, 2-year schools, 4-year schools, public schools, Canadian schools, and so on. And I've consulted at schools, colleges, universities throughout North America, and in fact, even in Egypt, as it turns out. Plan A, B, C, and D kind of reflects what my path has been. I didn't always start wanting to be a professor. That wasn't even high on my list when I first started my career. I was going to be in politics. I have 3 degrees in political science. I worked for a U.S. Senator, a Secretary General of the United Nations. I was a town manager for a bit. But, you know, along the way, it lost its zeal for me. And so I went to work for universities where I thought that there would be something different, and there was. And I first started off recruiting students. And later it developed and I became a registrar, and then I became a vice provost, a dean of students, an international guy. Lots of things happened along the way. So not A, B, not C, but perhaps D, and I'm probably still on that path. Professor defined, I think that's always a good thing to kind of talk about. This is Dr. Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes fame, and Dr. Moriarty represents to me a kind of professor. And these are two definitions that speak to that: a person who professes, from the Latin, or from Merriam-Webster, professes, avows, or declares, a one-way thing, which is, of course, exactly what I am not. I am not like this. The fishes will mix up a bit when you're with me. So teaching philosophy, a little bit on that. I'm all about individual student learning, of course. I want you to learn as much as you possibly can to reach the goals that you have in this course. I'm also about pursuit of knowledge, because I think that anytime teachers and students come together and students come together, we shouldn't just be about transferring knowledge, we should be about learning new things. And as it turns out, I'm in the process of updating our knowledge on SEM in Canada, and I'm thinking about writing or co-writing a textbook with students if that interests you. Self-improvement, always important. We need to become better people, not just better enrollment management people, but better people. And so we'll talk about that. And then lastly is this notion of respect for self and others, so terribly important in this time of pandemics and other kinds of world events. We need to respect ourselves and respect the others on our planet. A little bit about research. These are some of my current research projects. The one at the top perhaps would be of interest to you, and it's Canadian Enrollment Leaders' Reflections on the Effectiveness of Strategic Enrollment Management. Really trying to get a sense as to what do enrollment management leaders think about this framework that we're talking about here in these few classes we have together. There's a bunch here on international. Micro-discrimination is one. Very interested in how are international students discriminated against in the very minor senses. This idea of not in-your-face racism, but systemic racism, perhaps. Another study, this one I'm working with an undergraduate student on, and it's South Asian international students' perspectives on cultural insensitivity. So perhaps some of that is related to culture. A third study here, Achieving Sense of Belonging for International Students at Ontario Secondary Schools. We're trying to figure out what is it that could make for a better sense of belonging, a better transition, a better arrival for international students in our secondary schools, in our high schools. And then lastly, there's a study here, which we're just getting started with, to take a look at student mentoring in a post-secondary concurrent education program. And you should know I serve as an advisor for the concurrent education program at the University of Windsor. This is a slide that talks, this is my faculty slide at the University of Windsor, and you can see there's a bunch of links off on the left there. A little bit about me, my portfolio, my blog, but also about research, service, and teaching if you want to learn more about that. And then on the right, there's all sorts of resources that might be of interest to you. And of course, if you want to learn more about the University of Windsor, you can click here and get our yearbook. Supporting your education journey is really kind of what I'm all about. I have always been a supporter of learning, whether it was as a professional, whether it was a vice provost, and now as a professor. This is hugely about who I am. It says here that virtual office hours are by appointment. That's correct. I don't set prescribed hours because you have so many different schedules. Instead, you can email me at clayton.smith@Royal Roads, and that will get to me. And my commitment to you is usually to respond within a day's time. And now what I'd like to do is ask you to make an initial posting to introduce yourself. So what I'd like you to do is to go into our discussion board, pick on the introduce yourself link, and say something about yourself. Why is it that you're in this course? Who are you? What's your hometown? Maybe the institution you're affiliated with. Tell us about you. And if there's something you in particular want to learn, say that too. That would be great. And lastly, let's just begin our SEM learning journey. It will be a voyage, an adventure, lots of fun, and I look forward to having it with you. Thanks, everyone.